All right, well,
Greetings, salutations.
episode 13 of the Fab Commoner Vodcast. And we get to look at new cards again, which is always some of the best episodes because we love new things.
Of course.
Although I've
Especially
talked
the
a
ones
little
we
bit,
can't have.
yeah, I was going to say, talked a little bit before this, and unfortunately, there's a lot of things we don't get in this too, which is disappointing. And also, Uprising spoilers have started, but we're going to wait until there's a lot more of those, especially since we care about the commons. And those tend to be the things they spoil last. They
Yep.
start with the exciting things and then end with, and here's some random cards too. But who plays with commons?
I mean, what else would you play with? Fabled and legendaries, those
Yeah.
are just to be sold.
Yeah. Well, as I
I mean, pretty
mentioned
to look at,
earlier,
too.
not to give a slight spoiler, but we have a card that's like just one sentence off from a Fabled card.
Okay,
That's
all
being
right.
added into Commoner with this. It's just missing one line of text off of Eye of Ophidia, for example, or Heart of Findel. So, obviously has to be really good. But we're looking at classic battles, Rhinar versus Dorinthea, and because the big reason being that I thought these were mostly going to be reprints, and it turns out I was very wrong. There are a lot of new cards,
Yep.
and I tried to avoid looking at most of them. So this will be a first run for me too for most of them.
Okay.
But we're going to start off with the Rhinar thing, and the sweet thing is there's a lot of generic stuff in here too, so it actually gives you a lot of new things for many different classes and characters. So, sorry, heroes.
Hero.
There we go. But first off, we'll start with the Rhinar one. And right off the bat, we do actually get to use this Rhinar because it's exactly the same as regular Rhinar.
Right.
So,
It's a reprint
yes.
in majestic form.
Yes. And a cold foil. I wonder how sweet that looks. I haven't actually seen a copy of it yet. I do plan to buy a box set at some point, and I will probably scrap it for the parts. But we do get to use that because it has been printed at common somewhere, and so in the commoner rules, any card that has been printed at common in some manner of speaking, you can use regardless of what rarity is on the card. So we get the Rhinar, and shockingly, we get the Bone Basher. So,
Because it's common.
and I guess I should be opening the big pictures of
I
these,
guess.
and then some Iron Hides, which those will not affect us, well, they're rainbow foil printings of
Right.
Ironhide, but we could already have rainbow foil printings of Ironhide.
Right.
So we get Bone Basher.
It's just it
Yeah.
hits for 4, it costs 2.
So
And it's 2-hand.
yep. Oh, I forgot it's two-handed too.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
If
it's just bad.
If it was one-handed,
Yeah, it would actually be good because
Yes.
then you'd probably replace Mandible Claws with it because I think it does more than Mandible Claws does, but I can't
don't
really
remember.
remember. But either way, it's, if you have a copy of this and you like it that is cold foil, then sure, by all means, go ahead and use it. But I don't think anything's going to be replacing Ravenous Meat Axe anytime soon. There's just too many discard 6 cost relevant things, and Ravenous getting to draw and discard is just such a
I mean,
such a potent aspect.
maybe for a deck that isn't using that.
Yeah, if you've
Like-
built a brute card
like
that's
Rhinar.
not 6 power focused.
Yes,
Well, no, but Rhinar would use the Ravenous Meat Axe too. Every brute would use Meat
I
Axe.
guess.
It looks like a shadow card, but it is actually a generic brute card. That's why like KO is using Ravenous Meat Axe because it's just better. It's just better.
I think the only reason we use the Mandible Claws
Was
is
because you can put it with Arcane Lantern.
Of
Yeah.
course.
And probably all of the brutes do that now. You probably do Mandible Claw and Arcane Lantern in the sideboard of every brute, like optimally speaking, because their weapon isn't necessarily that relevant. Maybe
Right.
Levy is probably
Yeah.
the most relevant, I would say.
because she actually uses the ability more.
Yes, yeah, where it's kind of important to
And
get the 6 power things so you can banish them. Like you need to fill your graveyard more. So she's probably the one that would be most punished to switch. But like Rhinar and KO definitely have just the Mandible Arcane Barrier because it's easier to bring in Arcane Barrier offhand and swing for slightly less attack.
Right.
But yeah, so that's the Bone Basher. Into the much more interesting stuff. Yeah, we have Bone Visor or a Vizier. So it's just it's a hat. It doesn't do a ton of things, but what it does is basically when it's destroyed, you reveal the top card of your deck, And if it has 6 or more power, you put it on top of your deck, so you just leave it where it's at.
Right.
And if it doesn't, you put it on the bottom. So there's a couple of interesting things you can do with this.
Okay.
The important thing is it's got Blade Break. So this is a hat that can block
Right.
while having another effect.
Yep.
The difference from most Blade Break equipment is you can actually get both.
Yes.
This
'cause
doesn't
it
seem when it breaks.
triggers.
Yeah. Which is sick. All other Blade Break things is like you either block or you use it. So that's cool. What's nice about this is you're going to use this on your opponent's turn, which means that you're going to block with it, it's going to break, and then you're going to see what the top card of your deck is.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to go into your turn. So just make sure that if you have some effect that is going to draw a card and then discard a card, you know that you're getting one more 6 power card into your hand
Right.
to get discarded. So it increases your odds slightly of comboing off correctly. And again,
or
blocks
getting
forward.
rid of
So
something that's not.
yeah. So I mean, this may be an auto include into non-Levia brutes. It's hard to say if this is better than Hope Merchant's Hood in like the perfect world scenario. If like this effect is worth more than just sculpting your hand better with Hope Merchants, but it definitely would replace the Ironhide Helm.
Yeah.
It would replace that. This would be better because it blocks for 1 less, but you don't have to pay for it, and when it breaks, you're going to get to do some effect that is at least somewhat relevant to Brute. So this is one of the coolest cards because it's actually like it's a definite include.
I do like the art too.
It is. The art's actually really cool on that and this card, the Blossom of Spring.
Okay.
Which Findall Spring Tunic is obviously what they're referring to by another spring-related chess piece. And essentially it does part of Findall's. Findalls get you counters every turn, and then after 3 counters, you can remove them to gain 1 resource. This just gives you the 1 resource.
Yep. It is an action, though.
It is an action. That is the most disappointing part.
Yeah.
100%. If that was an instant, it would be better. Let me actually just compare that to, because this is probably the most relevant to compare it to is the Blood Drop Brocade.
Okay.
And that is an instant.
That is instant, and that's when you take damage.
Yep.
Or
You've dealt damage or taken damage. So there are some aspects where I could see you running one over the other because, this has conditions to do it, whereas this just gives it to you.
Yeah.
So, like, for example, Warrior, you could possibly replace Blood Drop Brocade because you don't really care about the chain in Warrior.
Well,
so Warrior can use those actions.
You would just start the turn off with this, essentially.
Yeah, you could do that too. That's true. If you're like if you're playing Ninja, you could just have Blossom of Spring and crack it at the start of your turn, and then just not have to care about whether it hits or not. So I mean, I don't hate this card at all. I don't think it's bad. I just don't know if it does replace anything. That's the real question. In fact, actually, you probably would want to run this over Blood Drop Brocade and Kasai on Reflection. Because it does the same thing, just without any requirements.
Right.
And for Kasai, you don't really care about the chain, I don't think. I think it's just second attack this turn, or next attack this turn.
But unlike Blood Drop, it can only be used on your turn.
True. But with the Warrior, you're almost never using it on the other person's turn.
True.
But
I don't... When would you use Blood Drop Brocade on someone else's turn? When you have to pitch to block for something? I don't even know.
So you could use it if you're against someone who is a Runeblade and has a Rune Chant coming at you now, and you need to pay for Arcane Barrier, but you also had to block with all 4 cards in your hand.
So you destroy this to use your Arcane Barrier.
Yeah. You could do that. Or like you pitched to me in a previous episode, you could use it with Kano, because you could use that resources on the enemy's turn.
Yeah.
Although 1 is not super relevant in Kano, but, could matter. You pitch like a blue to activate Kano, and then you pay 1 for a Scalding Rain off the top or something like that.
Right.
But I could see you putting this in Kasai, just because there's a non-zero world in which you Centauri Saber, they full block it and it deals no damage, and then you crack this and swing again and use it for like a pump spell or something like that. I think there is like non-zero circumstances in which Blossom would be better than Blood Drop Brocade, and I think there are much fewer circumstances where the opposite is true. Maybe. Does Gallantry Gold is an action, right? I think.
I don't remember. I haven't used that card enough.
That's true. You took like 8 turns to crack it in the Kasai versus Dorinthea game. Yes, it is an action, so it's not like you could activate this at instant speed. So I guess the one thing that Blood Drop would do over Blossom of Spring in a Warrior deck is that you could swing, and then if you have to use a pump spell that costs 1, then you can... Well, no, because you haven't done damage yet. Never mind. No, Blossom of Spring is better. Blossom of Spring is better in Kasai.
What about for an attack reaction?
You have to deal damage in order to crack it.
Oh,
so it would work on the second attack.
Yep. Okay.
But then, like, you could always just crack Blossom of Spring first.
Or
before doing the second attack.
Or you somehow deal damage to yourself first.
True. I don't know that there's actually a way to do that.
Do
we have a way to kill yourself in this game? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I don't think there is. Not in Commoner, anyways. Maybe there is somewhere else. The best thing you could do in Commoner to kill yourself is just Soul Shackle a bunch and never cast anything from your Banish Zone.
Right.
Or play Levia.
Yeah.
Or just play Levia. And eventually
and
die to your blood.
Don't trigger her abilities.
Yeah. But yeah, so, okay. I'm convinced there is one place in which this is a cool new card. And just in general, I don't mind it. And then we get like a number of cool reprints, back on Bear Fangs, Wild Ride, at least. Maybe this is why they waited for classic battles. They waited for actual good brute attacks to be printed before they made this.
Right.
Because Bear Fangs and Wild Ride are like the best brute attacks now, bar none. Okay, now that is a rare, I think. Yes.
It's kind of sad they didn't make new art for it, though.
Yeah, I know. It would have been cool to have a couple of different artworks to choose from and stuff like that. They haven't done a lot of that yet. It's mostly heroes that get that. That's rare. Okay, so here's where we start to get into commons. Some common reprints. Yeah, I noticed their deck building is very similar to our Brute one. Here's where we get all the yellows that have 6 power or more and 6 power or more. They know. They've cracked the code. And then blue Rally the Rearguard because reasons. Alright, those
They
are not
reprinted
new.
Rally the Rearguard, but only in blue.
Yeah, in the Brute deck, mind you. That is so rude.
They're paying homage to my original Levia deck.
True. So, new generic attack action card that it pitches for 2 and has 6 power or more. So this is a new, it's generic, looks brute, but it is generic. So this can go into anyone.
Why doesn't it have any flavor text? Is it not going to have flavor text?
I
or did they
assume
just
that
not
means
want to spoil the flavor text?
I assume that means that it doesn't, because this is supposed to be the card gallery, so this is supposed to be the cards as they're printed. I think the goal here, if I was to guess, and this is actually how it looks, is that they wanted to keep them as simple as possible, because this was meant to be their like introductory product that people playing for the first time would do.
If they're gonna do it like that, they might as well go full art.
I mean, yeah, that's true. And then also I would make the argument, too, that if you're thinking of this as an introductory product, like, yes, you want your cards to kind of be cleaner so that they're easier to use and play with. But also, if this is your first chance to get people into the game, they probably want some of that lore text and stuff to, get a feel for the world.
It's confusing why there's just blank space there. Like,
yeah, it's just a big empty box.
Is this where I go and get some famous person's signature?
Yeah, or you get a Sharpie and you write in your own rules. When you attack, it doubles its power. But yeah, I mean, it's another yellow card that has 6 or more power. I don't know if this changes KO at all.
No,
yeah,
I don't think so.
Cost 3. I remember we were struggling a little bit at the end with KO, where we wanted like one more 6 power attack, and we would have preferred something that pitched for more. So maybe we could have put this in, but at the same time,
did we put a red in?
I think we put a red in. I thought we did. Either that or we put in a non-attack, and we just hoped it wouldn't mess the numbers up too much.
Well, I'd rather put a red in than a cost 3, personally.
I think that's probably true. It's like we do have a bunch of cost 3s in that already, and so like the pitch 2 is kind of a problem in the sense like the reds it can pay for everything, but if we keep adding more 3 costs, then the 2 doesn't really work.
For 2.
That is true. But, if you are building Brute and you're struggling with resource management and you need more high resource cards, this is definitely one that can go in.
I guess so. It's an
It's
option.
probably not going into anywhere else, though. Like, this is a generic action, but it is probably not going into anything that's not a Brute. And then we got a new defense reaction. I don't know why.
Dodge.
I mean, the art's kind of neat, but I mean, it is a blue that blocks for 2. So it's not great.
No.
It's not great. Blue defense reactions don't usually make the cut anyways, because they only block for 2, and this doesn't have any text on it. So, like, you'd still rather play Sink Below or Fate Foreseen before you play Dodge, because those will at least opt or let you cycle a card. This is just, yeah.
Dodge. Well, I guess it is, a basic deck,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot of cards in here that aren't meant to be good, like Dodge, and maybe the next cards we're going to talk about. But they're meant to be, a fun deck to put against each other. So this is, and so I don't hate this card. It just obviously doesn't really add anything to Commoner. Yeah. But not every card has to be solid gold in Commoner. I wish it was, but then next, the big spoiler, drum roll, we have our card that's basically like a fabled card. So just to compare to the cards I'm talking about here, we're talking, let's just look up all the fabled cards. Yeah, there we go, fabled. Perfect. We've got this Heart of Findals that pitches for 3, and if you have less health than your opponent, you gain health. And this one pitches for 3, and if you pitch it, you opt 2. Arcanite Shard, if you pitch it, you create a Rune Chant, also pitches for 3, and then this is kind of where we fall off the rails a little bit. Oh, and they didn't put the other Fable cards, weird. But you'll see there's a common thing with 3 of those ones, and that is that they pitch for 3. And so we have Titanium Bauble, which is basically like all those cards, but just if you take away all the benefits you get for pitching them.
Yep.
So it's a common card, pitches for 3, and yeah. That's all it does.
Do regular baubles block for 3?
That's what I was gonna say. I believe regular baubles do not block. Yes. So
okay.
this is better than the joke of cracked baubles, because it does block for 3, which is good. That's what it needed. It needed to do something, so it's not like a card you draw and you're just like, okay, I guess I die now. Do the other Fable cards block? No. So see, Superior, it blocks. These cards don't block.
Yep. Okay.
Superior than these.
So this is a card that will go into all those. It can replace all those baubles that you have in your decks that are built around baubles.
Yes. Except in Commoner you can't play the baubles because they're not a common.
That's true.
Oh wait, hang on. It probably has been printed at common somewhere, right? Oh wait, I would have to look at. I'd have to look at it here. I believe, technically speaking, Cracked Bauble actually probably is in the format, because I think Crucible of War printed it as a common and not a token. Because I don't think it had anything printed at token in Crucible of War.
But that wouldn't affect Titanium Bauble, though.
No, yes. So you would still play Titanium Bauble over Cracked Bauble. But technically speaking, you can play Cracked Bauble in Commoner, because it is printed at common, and that's what you need in order to play it in your deck.
Is the Titanium common?
Yes.
Or is it token?
No, it's a common.
Okay.
It's a common. It's yep, all good. And the artwork is just way better. Look at that. It's not nearly as many cracks. All jokes aside, though, you probably would almost never play this.
Outside of
you'd play any blue card over this.
Yeah, this would be a sealed.
I mean, the one big thing. Yeah, you would, except technically it's not a token, so you can't use it sealed.
Oh.
Yeah, no. I want to be excited about this card because it's just really cool that they printed a bauble and it's like a regular card. And also it is better than a cracked bauble because it can block for 3 and it pitches for 3, which makes it basically like all those fabled cards. But most of those fabled cards didn't see play, and the ones that did all saw play because the other effect was relevant. Like Viserai plays the Arcanite Shard because it's something that pitches for 3 that will give him a Rune Chant for free. And like Kano used the Eye of Ophidia because he can opt, and Kano cares about what's on top of his deck because he can play it.
Right.
And it pitches for 3, so you can pitch it for enough to activate Kano, and then before the activation happens, you get to opt and make sure that you hit something relevant. So that's the big reason those cards saw play. Whereas this has no real benefits on top of it, but it is a neat card. So one day, maybe there'll be a resource tribal / bauble tribal deck, and then this will suddenly become the bee's knees. But
I could see merchants using baubles.
Sort of, but
like they're bartering with baubles instead of gold and silver and copper.
That's true, but like any blue card can replace it. Any card that's blue.
Yeah, but
any card.
If they make cards that like
that care about baubles or resources, yes, they just don't exist yet.
You can turn 20 titanium baubles into 1 copper.
And then they printed a new Dorinthea and Dawnblade. Unfortunately, both of these are majestic, so we don't get them. So none of this matters.
Hooray!
I mean, the one bright side was it's pretty much like a worse Dorinthea anyways. Yeah. But then again, we had this long talk about how it'd be I'd be more interested in getting this if it gave like I wished it was the original Dorinthea art and it was cold foiled because that artwork's fantastic and I would love a cold foil version of that. Well, as it turns out, this isn't even that Dorinthea, so I wouldn't even be able to play it in the place I play Dorinthea.
Of course.
But basically what it does is she just, if you give her sword go again, you can attack an additional time with it each turn, and it only happens the first time. So you don't get to attack 3 times per turn. And also, it's only Dawnblade Resplendent, so it's only this version, which is way worse than the other Dawnblade.
Which means if you don't use that weapon, she has no effect.
Yes, she's just a warrior with 20 health.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And we get another Blossom of Spring here, so if I buy this, I'll have 2 copies of Blossom of Spring. Woo! But then everything else is just a reprint for equipment. We have Iron Rod Helm, Gallantry Gold, Iron Rod Legs. I forgot, it does not have Refraction Bolters.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's odd.
Oh, yeah, that is odd. Wait, and did this have... Yeah, this had Ironhide. They printed Ironhide for the Brute, and then Iron Rot for the Warrior.
They're really trying to gimp the Warrior.
I think so. Something like that. Or they just felt like the Warrior was never going to want to pitch cards to activate it. I don't know. But there's that. Mentor, which we don't get because those are majestic.
Yep.
Specialization card, which we don't get because they're majestic. One cool thing, though, that they did here. Like, this is actually neat. This is a new card, I think. If I remember correctly. And what it does is your next Dawnblade attack this turn has go again. And whenever Dawnblade hits a hero this turn, put a +1 counter on it.
I think Glistening Steel Blade is a card.
I think it's Glistening. I think there's 2. I think there's Steel Blade Supremacy, and then I think there's Glimmering Quicksilver. I think it is.
I remember the Glistening.
There's Singing Steel Blade and Steel Blade Supremacy, and then this is new, and then Glistening. Oh. No. Oh, is it Gleaming, maybe? Gleaming Quicksilver? I think that's the card you're thinking of.
Maybe.
Let me just... What was... Oh. Oh, no. Oh, God, no. I'm hitting all the wrong keys. I did Sliver. Glint the Quicksilver. Because you did play this in Sealed.
Okay.
So because this is what I saw this card too, and I was like, I feel like this isn't new. I feel like I've seen this before, but it is new. One neat thing is this is the one card that makes this Dawnblade potentially better than the other one.
Okay.
And that's because whenever it hits this turn, it gets a +1 counter on it. Now, this doesn't lose counters at any point. So those will stay forever.
Yep.
Whereas the other Dawnblade does say if you ever don't hit with it on a turn, it loses all counters.
Right.
So these counters would go. But it does say next Dawnblade attack gains go again. And the next Dawnblade hit gets a +1. Which means this does work on the previous Dawnblade.
Okay. Yeah, that's true.
And it's also a Dorinthea specialization. And it just says Dorinthea. So clearly by what they're doing with the rules here is that this obviously will work on the normal Dorinthea because her name is Dorinthea and this just says Dorinthea. And then it's also saying that this counts, even though it says Dorinthea Quicksilver Prodigy. So it doesn't have to say Dorinthea Quicksilver Prodigy specialization.
It just does.
Any Dorinthea specializations work on this.
Okay.
Which I could see that being more relevant in the future too, because Viserai just got a living legended out of Blitz. So they could print a new Viserai that's Viserai something something, and is a young hero, and it might get all the same Viserai specializations and all that stuff, and just be nerfed in some way.
It would be kind of weird if they printed another young hero of him.
Well, but that's what,
it's like,
I think that's what they said
originally.
Though.
Young to old, and then back to young.
But I mean, they did just do that with Dorinthea, so logic doesn't matter. I could see them printing a Viserai, and if I had to guess that they did like a nerfed Viserai, so you could play it in Commoner, or not in Commoner, in regular Blitz, I would guess it would say once per turn effect, create a rune chant. It would just be everything else the same as Viserai. It just only triggers once. But just good to know going forward that if that happens, and that's why I wanted to look at this, that this does count as like, that's a Dorinthea and that's a Dawn Blade, but it works on all of the other ones too.
Okay.
So that's kind of neat, but obviously not relevant for Commoner.
Because it's majestic.
Yep. And then a bunch of reprints here, and there's some new stuff, some of which is rare, and some of which is not. And then, let's see, that's rare, this is not. This is where we get some of the neater ones, to be quite frank, because there's actually a lot of generics in here, which is pretty sweet. Sigil, and that, and then more titanium bottles. Alright, so, the last of the cards that are being added. We have On Guard, which is 1 cost, warrior action, your next weapon attack this turn gains +3. And it has go again because it's an action. Or an action. And it blocks for 3. I don't hate it. Does it go in? Maybe not. It does pump a lot, but since you can't use it as an attack reaction, it's kind of a medium on things that you can't use as attack reactions.
Right.
Because it basically would have to probably replace attack reactions that are already in the deck, and you're probably not going to do that with this. Because the big one that does a similar effect, I believe, is Sharpened Steel, which I think costs 0. And that's the big reason you run Sharpened Steel. So, but I don't hate this. Like, if you are looking for more things to give +3, this will work. This is definitely good. It does all the right amount of power. Yeah. Like, you want your red card to give +3. It blocks for 3.
And it only costs 1.
Yeah, so it's not awful. I could see Warriors running this and not regretting it, so... I probably wouldn't. I think the other options, like Warrior already just has so many good options that it's hard for that to fit, but I don't hate it. But this is where we start to get into the more interesting things. Thrust. Ooh. Target sword attack gains +3. This is not a Warrior card.
Oh.
This is a generic attack reaction. This is a second copy of Razor Reflex in a way.
You can use it on Talishar.
Yes, you can use it on any of the Talishar heroes. You can use it with the Merchant, etc. Now, definitely not something that we're talking about that we may do an episode on in the future or something like that, but is like weapon-based Benji. This works.
Does it?
Oh, wait, no, it's... Oh, yeah, it's a dagger, not a sword.
Yeah, those are daggers.
Oh. Yeah, never mind, but it does work on Talishar. So you probably would... Well, you most likely would probably put this in something like the Merchant or something like that, because... there's probably not a lot of much better options than this.
You could put it in Runeblade. I don't see why you really would.
Yeah, you could put it in Runeblade too.
Unless you're making a
yeah,
a weapon-specific Runeblade, which is possible. You could.
I mean, you could
do that for Rosetta Thorn.
But why would you? Runeblade's not going to have an easy time of turning Rosetta Thorn on if it's going to be weapon attack based. But
then it would be Nebula Blade, or is it Galaxy
you
Blade?
Could
I
do
don't remember.
Nebula Blade would probably be the best one if you can't trigger it, or you do Reaping Blade. Nebula Blade would be if you have like no non-attack action cards, you're paying 2 to swing for 1, but every time it hits, you're going to gain a rune chant. Whereas Reaping Blade would be pay 1, swing for 3.
Right.
And you don't have to do any other conditions. So you probably would do Reaping Blade if you were doing some sort of like sword rune blade.
That is Shadow Rune Blade, though, isn't it?
I don't think so. I should stop closing this tab. No, it's just a rune blade.
Oh, interesting.
Yep. And it is a sword. That was also the reason I opened it. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't out of my mind. It was like scythe or something. Yeah.
There is a scythe, but I
is
think
that
that's a majestic though. I think.
It is. Is that qualified as a scythe? Do they call it weapon scythe?
I don't remember.
That would be so brutal if they did.
It would be the only weapon of its kind then.
It is. It's a scythe.
Yep.
Wow. So you can't razor reflex it.
Nope.
Which rune blades do run razor reflex. So that's funny. That's fine. No wonder it's not played. But yeah.
Well, that and the effect is kind of garbage.
Yeah, that's true too.
Or not playable, rather.
Yeah, that
Relevant.
is true. But yeah, so thrust. That's something that can definitely go into your merchants and stuff like that.
Yep.
So we got that. That's pretty sweet. Then we have on Knife's Edge. Your next sword attack this turn gains go again, and also this goes again.
Mm-hmm.
Also not a warrior card.
Yep.
So this can also go into merchant and stuff like that. Or Battle Mage Cano using Talishar.
You could put this in Rune Blades and it would be good.
Yes, this is better than Thrust. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, because it can change the order of actions.
Yep.
Which is nice. So like for the merchant, now you can start off with Talishar and then do something else and all that. So definitely on a Knife's Edge is a little bit better. And especially since like merchant, for example, which is the easiest one to talk about with these in a way, because they're the ones that are going to have the least competition for cards because they don't have class cards. But like for merchant, for example, you may struggle to have good attacks and find ways to give those attacks go again. Mm-hmm. So what you can do instead is give your sword go again, swing with that, and then use the attack. So I could definitely see this being played.
I like this card.
Yeah. And again, I don't think it's like super powerful. I don't think anything in this entire box has been like broken.
It just helps make smooth everything out essentially.
And I think it just adds good options. Like it's just more options for like, and again, especially the merchant ones. But then anyone who uses a sword, which there are a number of them. Technically speaking, Ninja can also fall in that category. There is a two-handed sword in Ninja. You wouldn't run it, but like it's there. It basically does what Kodachi does, except it has go again automatically. But it's pay one, swing for one with go again, and it's two-handed, so you can only have the one.
Yep. So you wouldn't even need this on it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you're right. That's true. But yeah, this is a neat card, and it pitches for 2, which is kind of sweet. So that's awesome. Visit the Blacksmith. Your next sword attack this turn gains +1, and this goes again. Also not a warrior card.
Yep.
Another generic one. This one's a lot more medium though.
Yeah.
Because it only gives +1. And yes, it does pitch for 3, but it only gives +1.
But you could use it on that two-handed ninja sword.
You could. You could. But the problem with all these too is they only block for 2. So these are all weak blocking cards. But yeah. Basically, these all don't block well. And Visit the Blacksmith does pitch for 3, but
I mean, it might be. Would this go in a Kasai, maybe?
I feel like the answer is no, because I feel like...
Just because?
I mean, because you would definitely play blue Razor Reflex over this.
Yeah, I guess.
Because it blocks for more, and it's an attack reaction, and you can always use it on 1 cost or less attacks to give them go again. And so then the real thing you have to think is, like, how many of those effects are you going to want to put in your deck? Mm-hmm. Probably just the 1. And so that probably you're like, all right, Razor Reflex wins. But, and I think the same is probably true for, like, Merchant. Unless you are actually going, like, Sword Merchant, where all you're going to do is tackle Talishar and then just hope to God they die in 3 turns?
Yep. Which, I mean, maybe it's possible.
Maybe. I kind of doubt it, though. But since it swings for 4, that's a lot of pumping you have to do that they're not blocking.
Yep.
And you'll never be able to play that deck at your LGS again, because you will have done it once and killed someone with a ton of attack reactions when they thought that they were safe before your sword breaks, and then they'll just spend every other game you ever play against them full blocking your first 3 attacks, and then just watching your deck do nothing for the rest of the entire game. But that would be funny to make, though.
And then you get sold, and then I get sold.
That would be funny to make, though, as just like the most memey deck ever, where you're just like, all right, They die or they don't. They die or I die. Yeah, so there's that. Then we have Blade Flash. Another generic attack reaction. This one costs 1, but your target sword attack gains go again.
Okay.
Also fairly nice, though, because it pitches for 3, and it's an attack reaction.
Okay.
And I generally like attack reactions above actions, although that is worse for Runeblade.
You're thinking of warrior.
Well, yeah, but just in general, too, like, it can be nice to swing with something, and then your opponent is like, oh, that's, like, they don't have go again, so they're like, oh, that's all they're doing this turn? Yeah, that's fine, sure, I'll take the damage or whatever. And then you're like, okay, give it go again, and then, yeah, they'll probably block on the next thing, but they still, if you give it go again ahead of time, they might block that attack and the next attack, whereas if you just swing with 1 and they look at the map, they're like, oh, well, I could take 4 damage this turn and not care. But then afterwards, you'll have done more damage, because they didn't block both attacks.
Well, for Runeblade, you could use this on your sword instead of using, well, actually, specifically, chain.
Oh, instead of using, like, Soul Shackle?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you could use the Soul Shackle for something else.
The only thing, though, is if you're going to go that route where you're putting the sword goes again things in there, unless you are building a sword attack Runeblade, which you could. Right. If you build a sword attack Runeblade, then you can consider things like this. But, like, if you're just putting it into a generic Runeblade, the yellow card we talked about would be better than this one. Because that one, I think, was an action, not an attack reaction, right? If I remember correctly, I think it was. Let's go back to On a Knife's Edge. Yeah, action.
Okay.
So it's not an attack reaction. And that means it is a non-attack action card with go again that will give your sword go again. But that means for all the other Runeblade things that care about non-attack action cards, the Knife's Edge one does count. So whereas this does not.
This doesn't count as an
as a non-attack action.
Yep.
So
I was thinking of that after I said it.
So if you're building like a weapon-based Runeblade, you could play something like Blade Flash, although again, it's probably not great because you can't attack with the sword multiple times a turn in a weapon Runeblade.
No.
But if you were just building a regular Runeblade and you wanted to throw something in that could give your sword go again, the yellow one, actually you could have some sort of argument for because the pitch is okay, and it's a non-attack action with go again, so that's sweet.
Right.
Whereas this one will be harder to justify in a regular Runeblade deck. But certainly options.
Yep.
Options. And then just in general, like I could see this in like a merchant deck or maybe in a warrior deck. I could see it kind of in a warrior deck with Dawnblade where you swing with a Dawnblade and just hope to God they don't block. And you're just like, what? It doesn't have go again. You don't need to block. It's not going to swing a second time. And then you play this and you're like, aha, got him. I can see that. And the fact that it pitches for 3 is really nice. Because like, it's basically a second blue hit and run. Because hit and run you virtually never play as your, like after your first attack. You're always playing it to give your attack go again. So you never get the pump off hit and run. So this effectively does the same thing. It just does that at different timing.
I think it also costs 1 more.
It does cost 1 more.
Yeah,
hit and run is 0.
0.
Yeah. But that's why I say it's like kind of like an extra copy of blue. Like you'd still run the 6 copies of hit and run, but you do need a lot of ways to give your attack go again. And actually, as we're talking about this, it just hits me too. Like I have blue Driving Blade in my Dorinthea deck. I probably do just replace that with this. This is probably just better than Driving Blade.
Okay.
Because Driving Blade costs 2 to cast.
Yeah.
It's super brutal to try and cast it. And it does, like, it pumps slightly, but, like, I think it would be worth more to have the cheaper the cheaper go again source. Yeah. Let's just make sure. I think Driving Blade does do one other thing that's semi-relevant, if I remember. You didn't reset. Oh, I have to press search. I have to reset and then press search, and then I have to. Oh. I love this site, but I also hate this site. Okay. Oh yeah, it just gives it +1 and go again. That's it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I will. Okay, right off the bat, here we go. This, I've changed my outlook on it. This is a better card. I put this into my Dorinthea deck right away. Like actual correct answers to take out the Driving Blades and put these in, because the +1 off Driving Blade is not worth the increased cost.
Yeah.
And then it's probably what, it blocks for more. Yeah, that's. Not worried about that. We're a warrior. We're going to kill him. Blocking's for chumps. But yeah, 100%. You replace the blue driving blades with blade flash right off the bat. It's probably in Kasai too. We probably have the blue driving blades in Kasai.
Do we?
We might. We'll have to look at that again.
Okay.
But yeah, blade flash would go into that too then.
Right
If that's
there.
the case. It's just a better source of go again for them. Bolton cries.
Yep.
But then again, I actually think that there's a non-zero chance that Bolton is actually just a Centauri Saber warrior too. Like, I mean, I'm just not sure you would use the hatchets even with him, but although I do think, and someone did correct this, by the way, in the Kasai Dorinthea game, where it's the Centauri Saber only gets buffed if you block it with an attack card, which is actually very relevant for the warrior mirror matchup because we have no attacks. So basically, anything we block with from hand wouldn't pump Centauri Saber. So maybe there's some argument for like a Dorinthea deck. If you were going to build it around a weapon other than Dawnblade, you'd build it with like the double hatchets because the hatchets pump themselves for the previous hatchet attacking, so they will continue to scale up. So if you get to hit with one and attack with it again, like the power will keep amping on them.
Is that why we've seen Axe Dorinthea?
Possibly. Although those also, there's some good Axe cards printed in Monarch that were above commons.
True.
That we don't have. But I could see a world in which you would do hatchets for that. But this is just, yeah. If you're playing swords, and if my Dorinthea deck is like Centauri Sabers or Dawnblade, so yeah, I would play Blade Flash. And our final new card,
Toughen Up.
Toughen Up.
The defense reaction for
Yep.
2. Okay.
And it is generic.
It blocks for more than those other cards.
I will say, yes, it blocks for 4, which is what you're kind of looking for in a defense reaction. And this pitches for 3, which is really nice. It does cost 2, though. So there is a debate about whether this is something you would ever be able to really justify playing. If you have a heavy like warrior player base at your local game store that's playing Commoner because you live in a wonderful area, I guess. If there's a lot of people playing warrior there, you could definitely put 2 of these in your deck and not regret it because they'll pitch for 3, so they can pay for a ton of different things. And then if you ever need them, you can play them to block for 4 as like a response to attack reactions.
Yep.
So I could see situations where this could be good. And I think I do undervalue defense reactions that cost stuff because I hate the idea of having to pay for a defense reaction, but people play Unmovable and stuff like that, which costs 3. And I've seen many people justify it and say it's like really, really good. So I think I am probably lower on these than I should be. And under that argument, Toughen Up is actually one of the better ones you can do because it blocks for a lot while pitching for 3. And 2's not an obscene amount. 2 is payable.
Right. You pitch 1 card that blocks for 3 to block for 4.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Or if you're a Runeblade, you pitch something that blocks for 2, and then you get to block for 4.
Yep.
But yeah, I could definitely see this. I could definitely see this being a card that you'd put in your deck. But yeah, that's the new cards for Commoner that have come in classic battles. Dorinthea versus Rhinar, and also too, just aside from the stuff that we talked about, like the specific cards, there's a lot of cool stuff that if you are interested in getting into Commoner, like you can take the Rhinar right off the bat here, and you just have to change out a couple of cards that are rares, but otherwise he has a common weapon, and Rhinar himself has a common printed,
Yep.
and you're getting a cold foil version of him, which is really sweet.
Ooh.
And then all your equipment is rainbow foil here too. So like the Ironhides are rainbow foiled and all that. So if you want fancy cards in your Commoner deck, like these aren't awful for that. And just in general, most of this is actually Commoner playable. Like there's a few rares like the Bellows here and the Barraging Beatdowns, but then like the big sad one is having to take out Alpha Rampage. But but yeah, like it's not an awful idea. You're not going to get a lot out of the Warrior for, well, ironically, you're going to get a lot of good generic cards out of the Warrior deck, but you're not going to get the Warrior themselves.
Yeah.
And like the
which is
equipment,
funny.
we're not big on Iron Rot, so you're probably not going to get much use out of the Rainbow Iron Rot. But I mean, if you like Iron Rot,
It's pretty.
it's true.
At least I hope it's pretty.
Yeah, that's true.
It better be.
But then yeah, and again, you get some cold foil Rhinar out of this.
Look
which
at
is
this
sweet.
shiny, rusty armor.
I wish the baubles were rainbow foil. That would have been sweet. But it wouldn't have really made sense because the whole 40 card deck, none of it's foiled. So It's all foil in the equipments. But
Yep.
yeah, I mean, this is really great if you want to build Commoner Brute, because you're going to get a Brute headpiece. And I mean, like, this chest piece isn't great in Brute, but it's not awful. You're going to get Ironhide, which is going to be in your Brute sideboard. And then, like, Bone Basher is not the best weapon you could have, but it's a perfectly fine starting point. And then Rhinar is Rhinar.
Yep.
He's probably the one where you build the deck we built with KO, but you actually want to consistently do well. Whereas KO, you just don't care if you ever win, as long as you win that one game that you hit someone for 31 damage.
Yep.
But yeah, so it's a cool product. I'll probably buy this and just break it down into components. And yeah, there's probably a good chance we're going to be buying some number of Blade Flashes to go into things, which the good thing is these cards are fairly cheap, I think. They're not too expensive yet. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, Blade Flash is one that we'll almost certainly use. Bone Vizier will definitely go into the KO deck. Ironhides, of course, we always use those a lot.
Yeah, cold foil replacing.
Well, they're rainbows. They're rainbows.
Rainbow.
Yeah.
True.
The cold foils are only the weapon in Hero, tragically. Blossom of Spring will probably go into the Kasai deck and maybe the Dorinthea deck. I can't remember if there's a reason that. Oh, with Dorinthea, it doesn't. It's less important because if you don't hit with the first hit, you're not doing anything else that turn.
Okay.
But I mean, I would put Sabers in my sideboard, so then probably it's still worth running Blossom of Spring. So yeah, we'll probably use the Blossom of Springs. Those probably go in. There's nothing else really in the Brute deck that was super relevant.
Bobble is just a bobble.
Thrust may go into merchant decks, and Blade Flash is the big card.
What was the other one?
Toughen Up's not bad either. Oh, On a Knife's Edge. That's the other one.
Okay.
On a Knife Edge and Blade Flash are actual like big Commoner cards, I think. Like I could see both of these getting a lot of play. And in Warrior. I mean, like, these are all really great sources of Go Again.
Yes.
Like that's literally just another yellow hit and run for Warrior, essentially. For Sword Warriors anyways. So yeah. A lot of better sources of Go Again that have come out of this one than we had previously. But yeah, and that's this week's episode, or this bi-week's episode. Next one we'll also be talking about new cards.
Yeah.
And some cards that I'm trying very hard not to talk about now, because they are very exciting.
Will they all be finished by the next time we film it? Or is it just going to be...
It depends on when we film it.
Okay, I guess.
So, yeah it depends on if we film it next week or the week after. Because by the week after, probably everything will be out. I'm not sure if everything will be out next week.
Okay.
So... This is just a look behind the curtain here of when we film these.
Of course.
But yeah, so that's Classic Battles, Rhinar versus Dorinthea. Actually way more exciting than I thought it was going to be, because there are a lot of new cards that introduced at the Commoner rarity. But yeah, so thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment below, and subscribe for more Commoner content.
Bye.